the second of a couple of public meetings that have been held for the Southeast Sanitary Sewer Extension here in Susquehanna Township that you all, of course, are familiar with, one way or the other at this point. We did introduce our team. We'll talk about some of the background of the project, which again, some of this is redo of what if you were here last June, not this past June, but June of 19. Some of it you've seen before. We're going to update you with some more specifics. And again, I know that in some cases properties have changed hands since last year. So, some of you may not have heard all of this in one place. So we'll go through that. We'll talk about your responsibilities, what to expect, costs, I'm sure top of mind for many people, and then, where we go from here, and then we can take some questions. Let me just let another person in here quickly. Again, we are GHD. We're the design engineer and the consultant for the authority. We've been working for the authority since 1982. And, this project has been one that, as many of you know, has been, in the works since really the early 2000s and in earnest since about 2014, 2015. So I'm the primary point of contact for GHD on behalf of the authority. Mark Joe on the line here, as well as did much of the design of the project, and Mike and Mark and myself will be your contacts during construction, as well as the authority and township staff who will be in the field at the time of the project as well. Obviously, you are also a part of the team. You are an important part, of course, and a big part of what's happening here. We recognize that there are lots of other things happening as well, between school buses, maintaining access to people's homes for police, fire, EMS, your mail, the other utilities that might be out there. And then, there are a number of regulators that are, of course, interested in what's happening in the project, namely the PA DEP and the Dauphin County Conservation District as well. So that's a big group, and all of whom, you may have an opportunity to see in the coming year plus as the project gets constructed. And the main contact perhaps that's not on there is the construction contractor. And that is R3 Construction. So the project area, as some of you know, encompasses really the final portion of the township that has any sort of density associated with it that is not served by sanitary sewer, and it includes areas to the both east and west of Progress Avenue, from about Park and Wilhelm south to the cemetery, essentially where the borough or the township line is, and really covers that whole area. So picking up again some of the properties on the west of Progress Avenue that were not served when the northern portion of that development was constructed, and then of course picking up the areas associated with Wilhelm and Beaucrest and Beaufort and those streets on the east side of Progress Avenue. Some of you know this, but the reason this project is being required has to do with something called an Act 537 Sewage Facilities Plan, which was completed by the township and approved by DEP in 2013. This essentially regulatory act requires municipalities to do comprehensive planning of their wastewater facilities every so often, with a regular occurrence. As a part of that, some of you have been in the neighborhood for quite some time. There was some water sampling that occurred, some general survey work that occurred that was accomplished by both us on behalf of the authority and the township's engineer at the time on behalf of the township. And through that analysis, the DEP essentially is requiring the township complete this project, and the township through the authority is ultimately the vehicle for implementation of the project. The original schedule called for implementation of the contract, as you can see there, commencing construction in spring of 2020. Obviously, due to a lot of other circumstances, that's delayed a little bit. We did complete the design in June and put the project out for competitive bids, as is required by the public bidding law. And we received those bids on July 9th. So since July 9th, we've been working with the contractor and ultimately getting into a position where we were ready to award the authority was ready to award the contract and ultimately proceed with construction. Just some facts again about the project. It is not a insignificant project whatsoever. It is quite extensive and expensive. We have about 17,000 lineal feet of gravity sewer mains and laterals. So that's the piping in the street as well as the lateral piping that goes to your property line. We have 92 manholes, 2 grinder pump stations, as well as associated with those grinder pump stations, 600 feet or so of small diameter force main, 1.5 and 2-inch force main. And then, of course, with all of that comes, putting your neighborhood back together, streets, yards, right-of-ways, stream crossings, etc. As you can see, and many of you probably know, the existing sanitary sewer facilities are on the other side of the creek, so east of the creek, on the east side of Progress Avenue, and then on the west side of Progress Avenue, there in Park Road, which was previously constructed by McNaughton. So many of you will flow to one of 4 connections across the creek, and then others will go sort of north towards Park. So ultimately, those 4 tie-ins on the other side of the creek are sort of the critical pieces, obviously, to be able to make connection to the existing facilities. So that's a bit of background. Again, I think many people maybe know that already. Here's probably the stuff you want to know. Most importantly, what are your responsibilities? And we're going to talk a bit about these in more detail. But this is sort of a place on the slide that's titled Responsibilities and Costs of the Property Owner, a place where you can sort of find some of that all in one spot. There is a connection fee due to the authority. That's also referred to the tapping fee. It was established well over a year ago at this point at $3,000. That is although that is a lot of money, there's no question. It is significantly less than what the authority had the capability to charge. And as you'll see on a slide later, this is not intended to be a revenue source for the authority. Much of the cost of the project is being taken on by the authority and its base of customers. This tapping fee of $3,000 was established essentially based on a sort of an average or a common fee amongst the rest of the township. There are other extension areas that are actually significantly more than this. In this case, the authority chose to keep it at what they felt was a reasonable and competitive fee. You will also be responsibility for the installation of your building sewer, which is the pipe. Again, we'll have some graphics from about the curb line, so where you would connect to the authority's contractors' piping, about your curb line. I recognize there's not curbs, but curb line, property line to your home. Of course, many of you have septic tanks, so that piping will either go through your septic tank or bypass your septic tank at some point. But you will need to pump and demolish or make safe, not demolish per se, the septic tank, but remove the lid, be able to fill it up with material, stone or dirt, so that it obviously can't become a hazard in the future. And then ultimately connect your building home plumbing to the sewer that would take wastewater away from your home. And then the authority will take care of the restoration as their part of the project on their side of the line, so to speak. But then any disturbance of your yard, et cetera, for the piping that you put in would be the responsibility of the property owner as well. I get a lot of questions about what the cost of that might be. Really, it depends on where your lateral and building sewer are, and mostly depends on the length of the run of piping that they have to put in. So some of you, if your homes sit far back from the street or from the main line, you get a little, or your plumbing comes out of the back. You may have a little bit farther than go than some who say their plumbing goes out the front and they're close to the street. That again is a pretty highly individual calculation. Your best bet is to get a contractor in there to take a look at it. And if you have questions about, okay, well, that's all fine and dandy, but where is my piping going to be? Again, that you can look at the drawings. They're also posted on the website, and go to your property, and you'll see where we show again a suggested location for that lateral. But ultimately, as we proceed through the project, you're going to have an opportunity to finalize that location and make a choice. And again, our team, along with the contractors, happy to work with you on that. Where we show it on the drawings, again, we think is one of the better choices, but we recognize there are other people have other things in mind when they're putting that piping in the ground. So ultimately, that's your choice. All you have to do is be able to make connection to the sewer main in the street, or actually at your curb line at the authority's contractor's lateral at that point. Eventually, and we'll talk timing of that. And if I don't, Tom, please remind me, but we'll talk the timing of how that might work out here coming down as we go through the presentation. A lot of questions also about contractors or plumbers. Ultimately, the township policy is you must have a certified plumber, or I'm sorry, a master plumber registered with the township. They don't have a list, or they won't give out a list, because we don't, as a public entity, don't want to give the appearance of favoritism, so to speak, amongst a certain group of contractors or plumbers. But if you have a plumber in mind, or 2 or 3 plumbers in mind or contractors you're planning to bring to your home to give you an estimate, then you can always call the township and ask if they're on the list, and they'll certainly let you know. And if you have a contractor that's not on the list and would like to get on the list, then they can also contact the township and work through that process to the extent possible. With regard to financing, we shared this the last time as well. I will say there's a couple opportunities through Penvest, the Penvest Homeowner Septic Program, that allows you to borrow at reasonably low interest rates. That information again is in the slides. You could contact them, of course. These days, I'm not certain that these rates are any better than a rate you might get from your local bank, but certainly, perhaps worth looking into. With regard to other grants and loans and things on the authority's behalf, the authority did receive some funding from the gaming grant program. We also applied for a grant through the Department of Community and Economic Development, an H2O PA grant for sewer projects like this. And sadly, there was $500 million worth of requests and $24 million worth of award, and Susquehanna Township Authority was unsuccessful, as were many other communities in central Pennsylvania. So again, this is primarily being financed 90% plus by funds that the authority has borrowed. Again, going back through this discussion about your responsibilities, just to put perhaps some graphics in here. What the authority will construct is the main line in the street. Of course, install the manholes, and then install something called a service lateral. And then that lateral will be located at a point which you choose. In the good old days, when we had projects like this, we would stand in the room, and as you left the room, we would hand you a stake or a flag or something like that. Obviously, we cannot do that, so we will end up doing this a little more personally, probably street by street, as we go with the contractor, and locate those laterals. So we won't install, the contractor won't install their service lateral until obviously they've connected, or we've connected with the homeowner to confirm that location. I think it probably will work out better this way. A lot of times what happens is the stakes get lost, or they get run over by a lawnmower, or hit by the snowplow, or what have you, and ultimately have to be put back anyway. So in this case, we will again, as the contractor and their crews, as well as the authority staff and our staff, make sure that as we go down the street, we locate those laterals with the homeowner in mind. And we'll find ways to get a hold of you if I recognize that people work and might take odd hours and things like that. But we will find ways to make sure that you're obviously clear on where your lateral is and is not going to be. So ultimately, this lateral will be constructed, and an observation tee will put in about that location of the stake. Again, it's about the property line, and then it'll be your responsibility from there to connect to that tee. Now, the timing of that is ultimately you'll receive a connection notification from the authority that'll say, hey, the sewer system is now live. You have 60 days to connect. That said, they may be working in Euclid in 2 weeks. It won't be 60 days from 2 weeks that those of you who live on Euclid will need to connect. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, there are several tie-in locations on the other side of the creek that the contractor will not get to until next year. And ultimately, of course, as you know, the old adage, it flows downhill. So, if you're at the top and the bottom isn't connected yet, obviously you're not going to be able to tie your building sewer in. So there will be a bit of fluidity to all this. As the contractor completes work in specific areas, and then they can make those parts of the system live, then once those things have been tested and are able to be live, then those connection notice would go out. I guess the point I'm trying to make is you're not going to receive a connection notice with a 60-day clock prior to you actually physically being able to connect to the sewer system, of course. And then at that point, again, you'd have those 60 days to connect. Just some photos. This is, as many of you probably know what an observation tee looks like. You've seen them as you drive around the township. This clean out cap ends up on the end of them. You can see the building sewer is this 4-inch pipe, and then the service lateral is the 6-inch pipe. So again, what this shows is the service lateral essentially tying right into the building sewer. And in the case of this photo, that was what occurred. In some cases, again, depending on where your plumbing comes out, where the main line is in the street, it may not be necessary for you in your own specific circumstance to be at the same depth as the service lateral. So again, if you can be higher than the service lateral and still works out with your plumbing, then you're welcome to do that. What we'll end up doing is having this come up at a bit of an angle. What that ends up doing is again saving the homeowner some costs because in addition to length, a big part of the cost of the installation of the building sewer is the depth as well. So we'll want to, again, that's something as we get into the project, we will go through with the individual homeowners as we and the contractor go by. So what can you expect? It is an unpleasant experience. I can tell you that from firsthand knowledge. There's very large equipment that's going to be on your street at any given time. There's going to be some noise. I recognize that a lot of us are still working from home, or working from home more perhaps than we were, or your kids are at home trying to do school certain days. So, there's going to be some discomfort associated with that. You've already probably seen some of the machines come in. There's going to be some materials along the streets as they work again down the streets and into the right of ways. We'll have roads not so much temporarily closed, but might be one way or one lane at a time kind of thing, or some temporary paving situations again as they clean up at the end of the week before a better temporary pave job can be done. So these are gonna there's gonna be times where you're probably gonna be unhappy with what's happening. I will say that the direct discomfort in front of your home will be short. We're going to be in this neighborhood and area for quite some time, but we'll try to get past folks' house and off your street as soon as possible, and move to the next street or move down in the right of way. Once the contractor is down in the right of ways, aside from traffic going down into the right of ways, and the noise that you might hear from that, largely they'll be at least out of sight for the most part, unless you of course are right at the edge of those right of ways. Again, here's some photos. Large equipment, stone deliveries, whatnot. If you haven't seen these, as you're driving around and seeing projects going on in other areas, perhaps, these are fairly narrow cuts in some cases. There are some places on this project where we have very, very deep excavations, upward, close to 20 feet. In those cases, you'll have not just one trench box, but two trench boxes stacked on top of one another to make those excavations safe for the workers. And then, of course, again, like you see here, we try to keep this main lines to one side of the street or the other to allow for continued traffic and whatnot to, pass over the rest of the roadway. I recognize that the roads in this area aren't, the widest. So again, you're going to have access. Contractor's going to have to make it safe for you to access, especially obviously if you have to cross those trenches and things to get. For instance, in this picture, this person's driveway, was essentially cut off for that period of time, and perhaps that's a good time to answer that question, which again is a common question: is, well, am I going to be able to get in and out of my house? In this picture, what likely happened or should have happened, and what will happen on this project, is the contractor's crew and or our staff and or the authority staff will knock on your door perhaps that morning, or if it was the day before, say, hey, we're going to be working in front of your driveway tomorrow. Would you like to move your vehicle so you can get in and out, just sort of up the street a little bit? They'll do their work. You'll have to, go to your vehicle maybe at the corner, and then, when they're done with their work at the end of that day, or, they'll plate that over if they need to, so that you can have access to your driveway again. But in many cases, the time period that your access to your home is interrupted is often, a day or so. It's not, we don't leave open trenches around for weeks and weeks and weeks, in other words. But there may be an issue. There may be a day when occurrence just like this is happening in front of your home. And we recognize that we got to get, if there's an emergency, get people in and out of there. And again, between our staff, the contractor staff, if there's an emergency in the home and people need to get in and out, we're gonna make a way for folks to get in and out of that property. Again, manhole installation requires a little bit bigger of an excavation to install, and then there'll be some temporary paving. One of the things the contractor is doing is starting in the roadways rather than down in the creek, so that we can get temporary hot asphalt as long as possible here before the end of the paving season, so to speak, so that we can have a little better temporary pave job before the end of the paving season. Ultimately, the street will be overlaid. You won't have trench paving. It'll be again edge to edge or curb to curb, so to speak. But that likely won't occur until next spring, when at the earliest, when the paving plants reopen. And there's two reasons for that. One is we're running short on time, but two, more importantly, we would likely let this sit anyway, because we like to give the trench an opportunity to settle a little bit over the course of the winter, and then come back and pave and get everything up to grade again, and then hopefully reduce the chance of settlement in that trench in the future. What does your lateral look like? Again, you saw some photos of it. It's simple 6-inch STR 35 piping to the right of way, and then from the right of way you have that clean out and 4-inch STR 35 piping back to the house. And again, your contractor or any plumber who's registered in the township is aware of the requirements of the authority in that regard.
Said earlier.
So that's, again, some of the project details. This is a bit of a summary again on the costs, in case you were wondering. We did receive 7 bids in July. Those bids ranged from, this is for the entire project, of course, anywhere or from about 3.6 million to 5.7 million. That 5.7 million was a bit of an outlier. They mainly landed from the low bid of approximately 3.6 to about 4.5 million. R3 Construction Inc. was the low bidder and awarded the contract just at the September Authority board meeting. There's about $500,000 in costs associated with engineering, permitting, and bidding and legal fees. That gives us a total project cost of about $4.1 million. And, again, if you do the math, there's about 120 homes in the project area at $3,000 each. That's $360,000, or less than 10% of the project costs, or over 90% of the project costs, being absorbed by the authority. So what happens next? The contractor is going to continue to mobilize. They have some more pre-construction coordination they need to do, particularly with the regulatory agencies like the DEP and the Dauphin County Conservation District. That happens in the coming week, and then past that, they will commence construction. Again, what we're being told at the moment is they're going to start on Euclid and Wilhelm, essentially. Working in those paved areas, and then staying on the east side of Progress Avenue, working on Beaufort and Beaucrest as well, and then transition from there, which will take the better part of the rest of the year, if not longer. Transition from there down into the right-of-way areas that go down to the creek. And one of the reasons, again, just for info, that the contractor and we like to do that work in the winter time, particularly the dead of winter, January, February timeframe, is when the ground is frozen harder. Hopefully, it just makes for less of a messy construction situation. As you know, if you've been down there, it's pretty wet, and there's some wetland crossings that need to be done. Of course, we need to cross the creek, and we like to do that when we can do it in such a way that we don't create as much disturbance as possible. So doing that in the dead of winter sometimes helps that situation. The duration of the contract is 18 months. Obviously, the contractor is in his best interest to get it done sooner. That takes us all the way so that the clock begins ticking on the contractor on the 1st of October. And then that, if you just fast forward 18 months, that means they have to be done by April 1st of 2022. Again, they may be done. There's really 5 distinct sections of the project. So, for instance, one is the section on the west side of Progress Avenue. One is the section that sort of drains the Beaufort area down to the right of way. One is along Euclid. One is along Beaucrest. So there's several areas that are sort of separate drainage areas that, again, they could be accomplished in time, or will be accomplished in time. So how it proceeds really is up to the contractor. We can't necessarily tell them what to do and when to do it, but obviously they have to be done at the completion of the contract time, and 18 months should be more than sufficient to get this done. And again, it's in everybody's best interest to be done sooner than that, of course. So that is the end of the presentation. Hopefully you all who are having some connectivity issues were able to see it, at least see the slides. At this point, I'll happily answer any questions if we can just be maybe cognizant of your neighbor and try to let everyone get a chance if there are a lot of questions, or perhaps there aren't a lot of questions, but our way. So if you didn't notice in the letter that we sent, and I do apologize for the first letter, of all the things that were in that letter, the date and time of this meeting were not, and that was a bit of a snafu on my part, so I apologize for that. Hopefully you got the second letter. If you didn't get it, you'll probably get it tomorrow, Murphy's Law. But in the first letter, my contact info is on there, as well as my colleague Mark and Mike. You're more than welcome to call me, or Mark or Mike, or shoot me an email, and again, we'll happily answer any specific questions you might have, or meet you out there at your place or in the street or whatever.
Joel, we open for questions. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Ellis Grosnickel, Beaufort Street. I guess somewhere you mentioned on the website there was specific drawings at the property level as to where the anticipated laterals, et cetera, would go.
Yeah, that's right. So if you go to the website,
yes,
and you go back to that southeast, the news portion of the township website, right on the main landing page, and click on Southeast Sewer Extension Project. Down at the bottom there is a quite large PDF of the construction plans. So if you can download that and flip through them, you'll find your property, and what we will show on there is a lateral location. So let me do this. What's your address, sir? I can show maybe you where yours is to give people
3512. Excuse me, 3512 Beaufort Street.
Okay. Give me a second to.
Can you multitask?
I can. Yeah. Go ahead.
Can we expect to be solicited by contractors?
It's a good question. I have never heard that happening, but I don't know that. I have not heard of that happening, but I don't suppose I would be surprised. So, the other thing I would recommend, sometimes if streets or groups of neighbors get together, you can find yourself in a bit of a bargaining position. Also, there is a contractor that the authority hired that's going to be there, and sometimes now they don't often say yes, but sometimes they will also entertain the idea of working on a private building sewer as well.
So what I'm hearing you say is, as soon as they start working on the main line in front of the house, check with the foreman or the equipment operators, buy them a cup of coffee and go.
It doesn't hurt to ask them, I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
they, often what you will see is they will probably have a lot of these excavation companies who do this kind of work have multiple crews. And they'll have a crew maybe that does the mainline piping, and then they'll have a lateral crew that comes in and do the laterals. So a lot of times it just depends on timing and how busy they are, and those if they want to slow down and.
So then on the individual homeowner level, with that lateral contractor, there is a formal contract with a, if you will, a guarantee period of time where the thing doesn't work, we can come back to them and say, come fix the damn thing.
On your side or on the authority side?
Either or, both.
Oh yeah, the authority, part of our construction contract has a correction period associated with it of a year.
For the lateral.
And for everything that our contractor puts in, including the lateral, and your lateral, every piece of mainline pipe and your lateral will be tested prior to putting into service. Those same kind of things will need to occur for your particular piping as well. And as a matter of fact, once that registered contractor with the township, again, should know that that's a requirement of the authority and the township that your building sewer is installed in accordance with their specifications, but also tested. And yeah, whatever contractor you work with, that's ultimately between you and them. But I would suggest some sort of guarantee or warranty more appropriately. So let me just quickly give everyone an idea of what's available. So from the website, it is a large document. It's 25 megs, but 3512 is this property, and you can see this little line with the circle on top is the indication of the lateral. So the heavy black line is the main line.
Yep.
And the big dark circle is a manhole, and then this is your lateral. So ultimately, we'll come knock on your door and ask you, I can see there's a tree here, but I suspect your plumbing probably comes out back here somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's probably, this side is sort of probably the best and only place to put it. But certainly if you want to put it over here and
is there
run it the other way, you can, but it's the longer you go, the more it's going to cost. The longer the footage, the more it's going to cost.
Sure. Is there a restriction on how close the line can be to the building?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, but some of it has to do with depth, right? And your contractor, if your plumbing is very deep, they might, or below your slab or something like that, they may not want to undermine your. If they're right up next to your foundation, they might not want to undermine your foundation, so they might want to come off the side. I guess the real restriction, if there is one, is they need to be able to get a machine in there to dig it, right? So the track of that machine has got to be, probably 3 feet wide, and then ultimately they're not going to want to sit right on top of your house. So it's probably going to end up being, let's say 6 feet from the house anyway, or 5 feet from the house anyway.
Thank you very much, Joel. Appreciate your efforts.
Yep. Anything else? Commissioner Pine, do you have anything to add?
One of my neighbors, John, has a question. I'm going to swap seats with him. Hi, Joel. It's John Shepler.
Hey, John.
Prospect Drive.
Yep. We met.
Two easements.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, we had a question on the easement that is the most northern one. When will they stake that? Will we have time to take a look? We might
Yeah,
be.
they should do that fairly early on. I would guess in the next 2 to 4 weeks, they're going to stake out all the right of ways.
So that would give us an opportunity if it's
Yes.
since
Yeah.
it's wooded area, we can't tell exactly.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's a good question.
Super.
But I'll confirm with the contractor and for sure we'll let you know when they're back there.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm Fred Swinehart, 3817 Sunset Drive.
Okay.
You mentioned Wilhelm, Beaufort, Beaucrest, and I'm right above Beaufort or Beaucrest. Am I in that or later time?
If you are on a paved, yeah, so yes, you are. I mean, if you're in the paved area of the east side of Progress Avenue, he's going to he's going to be working there the end of this year into the winter before they transition down into the creek. But more specifically, he mentioned to us that he's starting on Euclid and Wilhelm. So again, that it'll be weeks or a month or more until they, again, depending on whether he progresses south or north. I say he, the contractor. But yeah, if you're on the street, we're going to try to get as much of that work done. But if they don't get to you by February, then it's likely that he'll work down in the right of ways and then it'll be the spring. So it's sort of a fluid.
It sounds that way. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have a question. Forest on 803 Wilhelm.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I did download these PDFs, but I haven't really perused them yet. Could you just give me a quick idea, for one thing, where the grinder pump things are likely to be at, and also, as we're not been on sewer before, is there any change anticipated? Should I contact my insurance agent regarding homeowner stuff as far as this goes?
So the answer to your first question is you're not one of the grinders. The grinders are two specific locations. One is on the west side of Progress Avenue, and the other one is up on Progress Avenue proper, and they're both the same property owner.
Okay.
And the second answer to your question, I really can't answer. I'd say you probably got to talk to your insurance company. From a value, you probably, I don't know if some of you are on city water, some of you aren't, but I know that I'm on Suez, and I get a notice from them every quarter. It feels like that I should buy into their homeowner protection plan because my homeowner's insurance doesn't cover the water service from my property line to my house. That is true. Similarly, the authority doesn't own ultimately will not own the pipe from your home to the main line in the street. It'll be your responsibility. Now, I will tell you, this is 2020. We're putting in, plastic pipe. Construction methods are very good. There's going to be people watching. It's going to be tested. These are not clay pipes from the 70s or 60s that we're digging up and replacing. So, I mean, from that standpoint, the possibility of a major repair down the line is not as likely as perhaps it was at one point. But whether it can be insured as part of your home, it's a great question. I probably should ask my homeowner's insurance agent the same thing. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, so real quick, can you just tell me, am I looking to go sideways or frontways for my property line?
What was your street number again? And help me, are you at the upper end of Wilhelm or the lower end of Wilhelm?
So I'm down in the dip between the two hills. So I'm let's see, how would I put this? I'm almost directly across from Harrisburg Gardens, like a.
Oh,
Joe, he's next to Polly's.
okay.
Polly's.
I'm next, exactly. So he's at sort of a low point going down to the creek, and I'm next to him.
Right.
Okay. Oh, next to Polly. Okay. You said 803?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you're looking at your front door, or I guess standing in your driveway from Wilhelm, looking at your house, or standing in Wilhelm, we show the lateral sort of on the right, on what I would call the right-hand side. So opposite side of your driveway. Yeah, opposite
Facing
the
your.
driveway.
Okay.
They're saying that we already have one, or they're saying they're estimating that's where they want to put it. I'm just
Yeah,
saying
that's
it's an
where
individual
we're
appointment,
contemplating having it placed. There's not one there, of course.
3,000 right off the bat to do it, but then that's the tie-in. But then, of course, the rest of it, and we have to find our own contractor.
Okay.
It's registered with the
Any other
township,
questions?
but I'll ask, so.
Done, please.
They had
This
it,
is,
they probably know the name of their company, but they
sorry,
did.
hard over this
Remember when they
lady.
tried it?
This is Tracy at 3104 Holland Drive.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm looking at page 3 of the huge document. Looking at the Plan 2 area.
Yep.
There's a huge, thick black line. Just wondering what that is. I'm not seeing it anywhere else on the plans.
On the PDF.
Yeah. The 8618511
Yep,
bid set
yep,
PDF.
yep.
And I'm on page 3.
The page 3 of the PDF. Oh, okay. So, yeah, that's so if you were to zoom down into that, or if you look at those individual plan sheets, that's the reason it's black on the PDF is it's kind of like a tight hatching pattern. So a graphic on the drawing that
Okay.
again, when you're zoomed way out, it just looks black. But it's
Yeah.
as I mentioned, there's down there along the creek, there's a significant amount of wetlands, and that hatching
Sure.
indicates where those wetlands are.
Okay. All right. And as far as the estimated where we fall into all this, is it starting with Plan 1 and Plan 2, or to go
No,
chronologically, or okay?
not at all. No, I think quite honestly, I'm not sure what their plan is for the west side of Progress Avenue.
Okay.
That again, I mentioned earlier, I think there's sort of 5 distinct areas.
Right.
You're in a bit of a distinct area that they could tackle tomorrow, which I don't expect them to, or they could
Sure.
tackle, a year from now and get all knocked out and all done in the span of, 4 weeks.
Okay. Okay. That was my only
Okay,
question.
that was actually gonna be my question. I'm on the phone line. I can't see any presentations, but I'm 908 South Progress.
Okay. Yeah. So you're on the west side of Progress as well.
So I could be a year from now. I could be right away.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be right away because every indication we've had from the contractor so far. Now again, they change their mind sometimes, but has been, hey, I'm starting on Euclid and Wilhelm. I'm working over here on the east side of Progress until I can't anymore, and then once the dead of winter sets in, I'm going down in the right of way to knock that out. So I kind of suspect that they won't get into the west side of Progress Avenue until next year sometime.
Okay.
But
And
I've been wrong before.
when would we be expected? And I'm kind of asking an open-ended question here that doesn't really have an answer. But when would we be expected to tap on, like 908? When would I be expected to?
So the
tap on?
interesting thing about your property and those that are adjacent to Progress Avenue is it's 2 manhole runs. It's like 700 feet of pipe right to Park Road where there's an existing sewer system. So it's not going to take them long to put that in and test it and have it be live. So it could be shortly after it's constructed in your yard, essentially. But that, again, that might not be until next year sometime. Whereas a lot of the other folks, it sort of depends, because there's a lot upstream and downstream of them that has to be live first. In that particular run, there's just not much, because we're literally putting that run in to serve, you and the other 3 or 4 properties there adjacent to Purvis Avenue. But again, like I said, until it's tested and accepted, essentially, you won't get a connection notice. Then when you do get the connection notice, you'll have 60 days at that point to make the connection. So, and you won't want to try to do a lot beforehand, right? Because many of you have a septic tank or whatever, and you can't take your septic tank out of commission until you have somewhere for that waste to go. So.
Yeah, and like my 908, I don't live in the house. It's a second house for me. So like dead of winter, I may not show up for 2 months at a time. So,
Okay.
I don't want to be doing this in the middle of February when everything's froze up and I can't drive 200 miles to babysit.
Okay. Well, do me a favor then, send me an email so we have make sure I have good contact info for you. And we'll make arrangements in that way.
Okay. And where do I send the email to?
My email is on the letter.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. That's good to know. Thank you.
Hey, Joel.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Bill Seltzer here, 1001 Wilhelm. I heard you say earlier about, some of us are not on the city water. My question is, for those of us like myself that have wells, and you guys are going to be digging down both sides of my property, what happens if something happens to my well? I did ask this one time before, and I never got an answer.
Yeah, we're going to make every effort not to disturb your well. But if that is the case, we'll have to take care of it.
And by take care of it, what do you mean by that? You guys going to drill a new well for me, or
we're going to have to evaluate what the issue or the cause was. Yeah.
No.
And we'll have to, again, if the contractor screwed something up. Partly we're trying to where we've positioned people's laterals as far from wells as we can get them, and
I understand.
we're coming to the property line, so we're hopefully not near your well.
Well, where you're going, like if you look at my property, my well is right off of the corner of the house in my driveway.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys, and I'm right, I'm right on the corner of Wilhelm and Beaucrest. So you guys are going both sides of my, the property right by my well. The people across the street, their well's right out in front of their house. Mark next door his is right in front of his house.
Right.
I don't know about down below me here where theirs is, but I know where quite a few are. I mean, you guys are going right down the middle of the street. You're going to be, from my well alone and Mark's and across the street here, you guys are going to be less than 50 feet away from them. Now, I understand you're not going to those depths, but I mean, in there disturbing that stuff, I have some concerns. You know what I mean?
Yes. And you might have cloudy water, just with all the digging around when it's ongoing.
I have filled, that kind of stuff I get, but I'm worried about collapsing or something like that. I mean, it's an old system. The other,
well, we're not blasting. There is no blasting.
No, I understand.
If they got a hammer rock out in front of your house, that could cause you to have some issues. And I mean, until it happens, I know that's not a good answer, right? But if we or the contractor break something that belongs to an individual property owner, whether it be your well, your street light, I've seen projects, unfortunately, where contractors just do things like, and it happens in daily life, right? They back into stuff. We, the contractor, they have insurance. They're going to have to take care of it.
Sure.
And it might mean treatment. It might mean, a variety of things.
No, I understand. Like I said, I did ask, I know about a
Yeah.
year ago I asked, and I just didn't know if there was any sort of plan put in place. And then with that said, also, I keep getting letters from this Suez. Is this something, I know it's not really the authorities issue, but, we're
Yeah.
going through this, guys are tearing the street up. Are we getting water too? I mean, I think this, for those of us affected by that, I think it'd be nice to know what we're in for.
It would be, I agree. And at this point, we have, and Commissioner Pine can back me up. I mean, we've tried diligently to engage both Suez and Capital Region Water in this conversation for quite some time now. And unfortunately, neither have any interest. I don't want to say they have interest. I shouldn't say that. It's not the right word, but the cost benefit is not there for either of those utilities to extend their system out throughout this neighborhood. Although you're absolutely right, now would be the time to do it. It would have been another probably $1 million or $2 on top of the already very expensive project. Should the authority wasn't going to build the water system on behalf of Suez or CRW. So unfortunately, it just didn't work out. Now, I will say there's also no plan for them. Now, they can change their mind, but there's no plan for them to come out next year, and put public water in either that they mentioned.
The same way that the sewer is happening, that was what you said, federally mandated or state mandated from the EPA.
Yeah.
I didn't know if the water was did anybody check in to see if, does the water have to be mandated as well?
It doesn't quite work the same way. No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah. Cause you have the ability, the reason why the DEP acts the way they do is not only because many of you would probably raise your hand, and I know a year ago you said, I don't have any problem with my well, it works just fine. It's not necessarily found contamination, even though there was some of that. What it is the threat of failure of a system, of a on-lot system, which can affect, of course, your drinking water, but also ultimately affects the groundwater and affects the watershed. And the DEP cares about all of those things. On the public water side, if you have a well that works largely, they'll stay away from you. And unless it's much more of a business decision in some cases, for those utilities.
Okay.
John?
Yeah, because I'm just trying to avoid going through this project and then getting this all straightened out. Then, 2 years now, going, oh, hey, guess what, guys? We're ripping it up again. That's
right. And I would hate for that to be the case as well. And I obviously have no control over what CRW or Suez do, but they've in the multiple times we've met them, they have never said, oh, well, that's on our 10-year plan kind of thing. We're going to get to it when we get to it. But they could change their mind tomorrow, I suppose. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I just want to make the point to anybody on the call who is interested in water. I mean, we did what I would consider due diligence, speaking to both CRW, Capital Region Water, as well as Suez. They wanted close to $1 million, and spreading that kind of cost over a less than 100 customer base just wasn't practical. We investigated loans, but as you indicate, or grants, I should say, but as you indicated, you try to get a grant for the authority for this project, and we're not successful. So right now with COVID and so forth, it's not the best time for grant money. So unfortunately, that's not likely something that's going to be happening anytime soon, unfortunately. Because I know some people are very much interested in water, and some people are very happy with the water they have, but the cost and it just wasn't working out. Not that we didn't try.
No, and it's like I said, my end of it, I'm not worried about try or not try. I just don't want to be, if we're going to go through this inconvenience, and I don't mean inconvenience on your end, I think it's an inconvenience for everybody. But I just don't want to go, get this one done and then find out the water's coming afterwards. I'm okay with the well personally. I don't know who wouldn't be, but that's fine. That's with them. But like I said, that was my two big concerns, is just if they were doing that project, and if something does happen with my well here, I just want to know that, you know, I'm not going to be stuck digging another well or whatever down the road, that you guys are going to take that responsibility, that, or however you handle it at that point if something should arise.
Yeah,
So
again, I think everything, you know, if something happens to private property somehow, and granted, we're trying to stay off. I mean, we're staying off private property for the most part. But you know, if there's an issue again that's caused by actions of the contractor, and sometimes again, you know, things happen. You know, we will make sure it gets taken care of one way or the other. You know, if you were travel around the township, you know, we just finished a pretty sizable project, a rehab project on near the township building. You know, that project was again another $3+ million project. In that case, we were making repairs on private property, and as well as in the mains and in the streets. And you know, there was things that happened. You know, people sidewalks, they were unhappy with their sidewalks restoration, or you know, something happened in the street, cars run over stuff. You know, we try to work through those issues on a case-by-case basis.
No, I get it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yep.
And Joe, any history or experience with R3 constructions? Where are they? What's their bio?
So they're from
worked with them in
they're
the
from
past?
yeah, we have they're from Nazareth, so out in the Lehigh Valley. They're owned by a gentleman named Philip Ronca. You might know the Ronca name as an excavating company that is also from Eastern PA, but does a lot of work here in the Harrisburg area as well. And that, you know, they have the capability to do the project. You know, they know what needs to be done. They've worked not in Susquehanna Township, but Lower Paxton Township recently, as well as other projects for our firm and probably other firms. I will say that there are only a handful of contractors that can do that work in central Pennsylvania that can do this kind of work, these large projects with deep cuts and whatnot. And R3 is one of them. But also, you know, we got to do what we got to do. I mean, they're qualified, they were responsible, and they're the low bidder. So that's the way public bidding works. And we do our best to work with the contractor, keep an eye on things, and again, try not to have them trash the place. You know, but ultimately, again, a lot of it for you as a resident depends on who the person is standing in front of or on your street that day. You know, like you said, you might get to know the crew. Usually, if the foreman is good and the operators are good, then things go fine. You know, and if they're courteous and that kind of thing. When they're not, obviously we want to know that, and as would Philip Ronca want to know that as well, if his staff aren't being courteous to the residents and taking care of their concerns.
Thank you.
This is Kathy Griffin, 807 Wilhelm Road.
Okay.
Just a question. When will we be required to pay the $3,000 tapping fee?
That is at the time that you'll get your connection notification ultimately when you go to construct your building sewer and get ready to actually hook up. Jill, I don't know if Jill's still on the phone. I think that's the way it works.
Okay.
Yes, that is how it works.
So, I mean, at the time of essentially pulling the permit to actually construct the building sewer.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Now you could, I mean, presumably you could pay before that if you wanted to. I don't, you know, but you know, they will require it at that time.
Okay.
It's a good
thanks.
question. I probably should have mentioned that. Yep. Okay. 10 minutes till 8. Are there any final questions? again, you have my contact info, you have Mark's contact info, you have Mike's contact info. You will see all of us in and around the project. You'll probably see Mike the most, but you'll see lots of Mark and I as well as Austin Griffin from the authorities, the township staff. Please feel free to contact me. I've talked to a number of you already. I know that these are challenging projects, and we'll try to get through it as best we can. All right. Well, that's all I had. I appreciate you all very much for attending. Again, this recording will be made available. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was just going to say, just one point I want to make to people was that all along we've kind of been saying that we expected that this would start in the low areas and work up, and you've kind of covered this, but I'm just kind of reiterating the point you made, that people are going to see construction right in their streets a lot sooner than we thought. But obviously the connections won't be made until it's connected down to the main by the creek. So really, we're still looking at a situation where it's going to be quite a few months, maybe closer to a year before there'll be many hookups. I think it's probably fair to say, don't you think?
Yeah, it certainly is going to be a next spring type of thing for most everybody at the earliest. Yep. And again, there's a reason. The method to the madness, just so you know, is the contractor has an interest in trying to get the stuff constructed in the streets to the extent they can, while they can still get hot mix to be able to do temporary paving in a nicer way than try to put cold patch paving down, which is you've probably driven over it a million times and it comes up into your car and whatnot. So that's the method to the madness at this point. Otherwise, he would to Tom's point, they would likely start down below, and as well letting the right of way dry and freeze over the winter is a good idea just from an environmental standpoint as well.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just the idea that people might see construction right at their home. They might even see a connection come right up
right.
in front of their house. But the time to connect to that connection, they won't get a chance to do that, obviously, until it's connected to the main down by the creek.
Yeah.
Just want to make that point. But thank you, Joel, for all your work on this.
You're welcome. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone. I appreciate your time. Looking forward to meeting some of you as the project progresses. And again, at any time, please feel free to reach out to me. You have my number, and we'll take care of it. Okay. Have a great night.
Thanks. Have a great.
Yeah. Bye-bye.